Actually, it's Marie-Ève, but I dare anyone who's not French to say my name and not make a mistake. So we're gonna go with Mel because it's easier. You can also know me from as ZeBirdBrain, the silly bird on YouTube who makes tutorials. And I am joined today with a very lovely guest to talk about animation, but more precisely like 3D referencing and using 3D to help your animation process. So, hi, lovely guest. Would you like to introduce yourself to us today? Well, we don't know you, but we've already saw your work here and there. So, yeah.
I've got some fingerprints out there. They're very tiny, very hard to spot. But if you look hard enough, you'll see them. Yeah. Keaton. I do 2D animation. I've done 3D animation. I prefer 2D, but I really like doing 3D references in 2D. And that's not just a plug for the topic of discussion today. I'm like kind of thoroughly enthused by the cyborg's arm in Treasure Planet, which is how they did it. They had a 3D asset that they traced over.
That's
and it's
insane.
Amazing. And they did a test with Captain Hook, and it looked amazing. And I want them to redo that with robot arms, but I guess that's pretty much just what Treasure Planet was.
I mean, I get it. I studied paper animation firsthand. Then I thought I couldn't draw. So I went to study 3D animation and became a 3D animator for 6 months. And then I went back to animation that is drawn because I was drawn to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was a 3D animator for a while. And yeah, now I'm not a full-time 3D animator, but I love the knowledge I got from there because I can use it to do better 2D work. So, we're both on par with the subject today. Yay.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know why this is freaking out. Oh, there we go. Okay.
It happens sometimes.
Yeah. There we go. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to see if anyone in the chat has some little first-hand question, because that's how we do these little videos. Like, they're not pre-recorded or anything, so if you guys have any questions or anything you want to know or ask, you can always ask, and I might or might not see it. If I don't see it, Janelle, our lovely background wizard host, is going to tell me to look at the chat and do my job. So yeah. Okay. So let me go get my little cheat sheet, because I'm an organized person and I made a cheat sheet of cool things we could talk about.
I am so disorganized. Like, if you have any question as to how organized I am and how terrible I am at organization, just look over here at this whole area of just invisible lines that don't show up anywhere else.
How about your node view?
Say again?
I was going to say, yeah, but how about your node view? That's the real thing to see if someone's organized or not.
Oh, we don't need to look at that.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. Okay. So we briefly talked about my path. I was like, yeah, I was a 2D animator, then I went 3D, then I went back to 2D and stuff. So I studied hand-drawn animation for 3 years, then 2D for 2 years, and then worked into 3D and 2D. But that's not important. What is your path? How did you get to draw these little lovely animation frame? Because yeah, not. Oh, and by the way, I did study animation and worked in a little bit, but it's not my day job, my full-time job anymore. I don't do animation full-time, and a lot of people don't do animation full-time, and that is okay. And that's also another subject we can talk about.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. I can't think of any primetime examples right now. But my path, it's crazy. So I did like I've done a lot of art summer camps, like a ton, growing up, and I think one of my earliest memories of one was I went to, they had like an animation class, but it wasn't like an
Mhm.
animation class because we were all like 6 and stupid.
Okay.
But we got to do a little drawing on like a Xerox. Like, you know, we made our backgrounds, then we made the see-through drawing on the see-through plastic, and then we
Yeah.
painted on the back part. And I was like trying to recreate that scene from the Curious George movie where he like gets into the toilet paper, because that
Okay.
movie had like just come out. And so, you know, it was just one still image that was just on like a cell. Basically, we were just recreating a cell. And then I got a DSi with Flipnote, and that's
Oh
when I was
yes.
like, oh boy, boy, do I like animating. And I remember I like figured out how to do ease in, ease out just because I thought it was like a satisfying motion.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you. And then yeah, and so that I was like middle school. In high school, I didn't do anything. Like I did nothing in high school, and somehow, but that was I did just enough to get into art school, which is where I learned more animation stuff, and that's where I learned how to do Toon Boom. But I will say, the education that I paid for there was not nearly as great as Mel's tutorials on YouTube.
Oh, thank you. I
I
really
100%
appreciate
mean
it.
it. Yeah.
I'm glad it helps you because that's a lot of the reason why I do it. Like I was very lucky that my animation, well, I say animation school, it was not animation school, it was like a public school that had it animation
Yeah.
program. Yeah. It was amazing. And it was very cheap, and I know it's not a luxury that a lot of people can have. So I always thought I was like, well, if I got it for cheap, I'm gonna give it to people for cheap. So I'm really
That's
happy if people
amazing.
enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the exact same philosophy Abigail Thorne had, because she went to like some school in London and was like, man, school is expensive and I get to go to school, so I'm going to share that knowledge with everybody.
Oh,
I think
that's
that's
very
great.
cool.
Yeah. But I art school was, not to, you know, completely discredit art school. It's hard, but you do kind of find your family there,
Oh yeah, that's really true.
which is important to remember.
Yeah, I made a video lately about like some times ago about like animation school
Mm-hmm.
and like should you go there or not, and like you know
Yeah.
because there's a lot of stigma around it. There's a lot of stigma around school in general, and
Yeah.
like I don't think everything is deserved. I think school's not as bad as a lot of people make it
Yeah.
seem. But that's another debate.
Yeah.
um, but like you said, school is more than just academic learning. It's being part of a community and learning from peers and just being
Mm-hmm.
part of something that is like the whole social aspect of school is so important,
It really
especially
is.
for animators, because
Oh
you
yeah.
will need to talk to people and be social and you know, learn a few
Coordinate.
things.
Learn
Yep.
to coordinate and communicate, which was it was hard at first. I mean, because I was a tiny shy boy. I was like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. I have nightmares about my first year in art school just because we spend the first year like kind of getting to know all the aspects of filmmaking,
Mm-hmm.
and the animation program doesn't start until like officially until second year, when you like just, that's all you do.
Okay.
So during that, you know, it was like on sets and everybody had the attitude of like, even though we were all in the same class, everybody had the attitude of like, there's a million people out there who want your job. And it's like, dude,
Oh no. Oh
your,
no.
your school film thesis is not, your 3-minute short film is not that big a deal. But it's crazy because
Yeah.
when I was doing mine, I felt like it was a huge deal, and I was legitimately, I had kind of what Janelle said earlier, a waking nightmare when we like got off schedule, and then like some people just didn't care, and it was just like a whole thing. It was like the most upset I've ever been, and I was like, I don't, you know what, I don't like this. I don't like any of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for that I agree. Like, I think people overthink a lot of their student short film. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, yeah, no matter how good you are, you will hate your student short film in like a few months after making it because you learn so fast. And speaking of learning, how did you, or like how did you learn to use 3D into Harmony? Because I know like learning, like schools usually teach animation, but they rarely teach all the subtleties of every software. And
Right.
so like I had to learn how to use 3D 100% on my own. Because I learned Harmony 9 in school, and 3D was not that much of a thing, if at all, in there.
Yeah.
And how about you? How did you get around the 3D?
I learned on the job.
Yeah!
Because
it's like that.
yeah, and like I personally feel like that's how you, or not you specifically, you, Mel,
Yeah,
but
people
like
in general.
yeah, people in general. I think it's like that whole concept of pick a character that you're already obsessed with and draw them as much as possible, and before you know it, you'll be better at drawing. So like I think guiding your like artistic skill, like leveling up, is at least in your free time, is done best by pursuing things that interest you. Like, because a lot of the coolest things that I would see in those short films, like somebody did one of those House of Cards text message thing pop-up things on their short film, and everybody was like, whoa, how'd you do that? And he was like, I Googled it. So like, yeah, learning on the job, just as it approached. Never knew how to do it before I needed to know how to do it, and then learned how to do it by doing it. It was fun. I've done 3D before. Like in school, we did a lot of Maya, and my short film for fourth year was done in Maya. And then for doing 3D in Toon Boom, I did for Lackadaisy, we have 3D assets like the cars and the guns, and I think one
the
beer
bottles
bottle.
and whatnot.
Yeah,
the violin as well.
Yeah, the violin. And so those were all Blender files, and Blender is kind of similar to Maya, but with every program there's like slight nuances and everything.
Yeah, it's kind of similar, but not
kind of similar in that they both have an X and a Y and a Z axis.
They're both 3D software. I'll give them that.
Yeah. So yeah, I animated a car in 3D using a program that I'd never used before for the first time as a job. And I didn't necessarily nail it, but I certainly learned a lot.
Yeah.
Then I also learned how to, reference that into Toon Boom as like and sorry, my thoughts are all over the place.
That's okay. Mine as well.
Yeah. We learned, I figured out how to, sorry, let me gather my thoughts. Exported all the frames after animating it. It was an interesting process of like referencing the background that I was provided with in Blender while also using the car and treating the 2D image as though it were a background, and then driving the car and like getting it to do exactly what I wanted it to do, and getting the proper angles and setting up the camera and all that. But once all that was done, just exporting those images or those frames and then putting them into Toon Boom and making sure everything lined up. I did have to kind of futz with it a little bit more in Toon Boom, like messing with the putting a peg on it and messing it with
Put a peg on
the
it.
Z. Yeah, I that's the true lesson that I took away from Lackadaisy was the value of pegs.
Pegs
Because
are
oh man,
amazing.
did they help me?
Ah, that's really interesting. I forgot what I was about to say was so important. Yeah, what you were mentioning about having to like kind of navigate the 3D car or 3D objects on top of 2D backgrounds. This is not even exclusive to like 2D animation. My first gig as an animator, like in studio, was a 3D animator on a 3D production in 3ds Max. But to save on money, the production had their backgrounds done in 2D back paintings because it's cheaper to do paintings than 3D backgrounds.
Yeah.
So we were animating everything. All the 3D characters were 3D, but everything that was not a character was 2D and was so mind breaking to animate like that.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's a skill to develop, I guess.
Yeah, it's like it's crazy because like one of the things you don't realize with 3D until you start doing it or like messing with a 3D program, is that things don't look like the way you think they look like.
That
And
is
they don't
so true.
they aren't translated exactly or laid out in space exactly the way you think they are. So like a lot of my struggle with like animating that car was just like figuring out like, okay, so like if I want to get this thing going, then I need to do this, and if I want this, then I need to do this, and I have to manipulate 5 different things to get the car like far enough away that it looked like it had traveled across the background. And it was like a whole thing, but I think it worked out pretty well.
From what I've seen, you did a pretty darn good job.
Oh, thanks.
Pat yourself on the shoulder.
No, I will.
Okay, let's see. We have a question in the chat that says it's King George, actually. Welcome.
Whoa.
All hail. Says, how long did it take you to learn Toon Boom? I've been looking into getting into animation and I want to use Toon Boom. Was it hard to learn? I think if I answer that, it took me not too long to learn it, but you have to do a lot of trials and error. Like you have to not be scared to get your hands dirty and like fail. And failure will be part of your learning. That's my advice.
Yeah.
But yeah.
How
about you?
It was crazy to me because I opened Toon Boom and I was like, wow, this is like Flipnote, but with like a million more buttons.
Yep.
And I think that like one of the biggest things for me was learning, familiarizing myself with all the tools and all the buttons and everything that, not necessarily knowing how to use it the right way, but just at least having a grasp on what they did and what they were meant to accomplish. That really helped me because, if you're sitting there looking at a paintbrush and you're like, what is this thing? How do I use it? And it's going to be very frustrating trying to use it if you've never understood what a paintbrush is before.
Yep. And I think also one thing that really helps to learn animation is in Toon Boom is if you take if there's a button and you don't know what it does, you can just take your cursor and hover on top of it, and you're gonna get a magic blue box that's gonna be like, "Hey, that's what the tool does," and it's very helpful.
I'm picturing like a Dubis McGoobis style, like little guy that pops up, just hey,
look at this.
This fills in. It's a paint bucket tool.
Exactly. That's exactly how it goes.
You've used Kid Pix. You should know this.
And yeah, so that was the question. I'm gonna look at Twitch if there was a question. Nope. All clear. Okay, next on my little cheat sheet. Yeah, so you've talked a bit about Lackadaisy. So how did you use the 3D for that production, like, did you have to work with the 3D models like in Harmony at some point?
I kind of did, actually. It was a lot of cross-referencing, right? So I would do stuff in Blender with the car, and I'd be like, all right, this looks right. I think this works. I definitely should have, like, done some sort of... I've seen a lot of people do this lately, where they, like, for making 3D stuff, they like kind of plot it out in 2D. Like, you know, they do a kind of like a grease pencil type situation, like in Blender, which that would have helped. But that's a lesson for next time. So it was a lot of kind of trial and error, but errors it did not, you know, indicate that I wasn't making progress. It indicated that I was learning.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah, and let's see. So yeah, you know, I'd go for the car in Blender, and then I'd export that. I'd shove that into Toon Boom, and I'd be like, all right, does this make sense? And if it does, I'd be like, can I fix this in here, or do I have to go back to Blender? And, you know, it was just kind of a process like that. But it's definitely something I want to use more and I want to implement, because we were talking a little bit before the stream, or maybe this was during the stream. I'm losing time. But anyway, but how they made 3D assets for Treasure Planet and then like kind of traced it, kind of didn't. But I love that look. I think it's amazing. It's something I realized is that a 2D animation will look amazing if it seems like it's 3D rendered, and then a 3D animation will look amazing if it seems like it was rendered in 2D. Which is like
the best of both worlds.
Yeah. So yeah, I love that like trace over kind of look of it's not like rotoscoping, because you still had to do animation to get it done, but at the same time you didn't have to like murder your hand or sacrifice a lamb to be able to draw something that looks 3D.
Yep. Pretty cool. Oh
my goodness. By the way, please do not judge me for how messy my color layer is. I know. I'm sorry.
Too late.
Dang it.
Dang it.
I'm embarrassed.
It's okay. Okay. Is there, because we were teaching about like, talking, I mean, about, you know, learning the software and whatnot. Is there some things that you've learned about Harmony while trying to work 3D with it?
I'm trying to think with specifically 3D. I mean, it was that so one of the other shots I did that involved 3D was a dolly pull with the Lackadaisy cat Mordecai.
For the people in the audience that are not well accustomed with all the terms, what is a dolly pull?
Oh, so it's kind of like a optical illusion where it seems as though the background, and you've definitely seen this in movies, it's probably easier to like just point to it and be like, this is a dolly pole, than like describe it, but I'm going to do that anyway. So it appears as though the background is getting farther and farther away, while the main focus of the shot, be it a character or, you know, the barrel of a gun, is getting closer and closer. Effectively, what they do is they put the camera to do this in real life, not necessarily in cartoons. But they put the camera on this thing called a dolly, which could be anything from just a cart that the camera guy is sitting on to like an entire, you know, crane mount sort of situation. and they take the camera and they pull it back, like physically move it backwards, not zoom out or anything, but they like physically pull the camera guy and the camera backwards as the camera itself zooms in on the subject of focus, which creates this like illusion where it like, you know, it looks like it's going from a very short focal length to a very long focal length. I think maybe sometimes they adjust they mess with the focal length while doing it too. I don't know if that's a possibility, but I think that might be a part of it. But yeah, the most famous one is in Jaws, where
you're right.
the main character is sitting on the beach and he like realizes that it's Jaws. Jaws is here. He's here. And like, you know, he has there's that very dramatic zoom in on his face. That's a dolly pole.
Thank you for the knowledge.
I hope it made some amount of sense.
It did.
Great. But yeah, so that shot that I was working on with Mordecai, the dolly pole, that showed me the value of pegs, really and truly, because I was so stupid. I went in and like for Mordecai's reference, I anytime I make an animation, I like kind of move the reference picture around as though it were like a puppet, so that way I can like keep my proportions and everything. And what I did with Mordecai's reference was I just shrunk it. Like I manually shrunk it to be farther away from the gun instead of like I went in between and like, you know, adjusted the scaling and everything manually instead of just putting him on a peg and having him like slide backwards. So that was a nightmare of my own creation.
Well, hey, you learned from it, so that's cool. Yay.
I did, and I'm so upset because like as soon as I finished it, I was like, oh, I could have just done that with a peg. So the reason like I was trying to be so meticulous is because he's paired up with his gun in that scene, which is a 3D asset, and you know all the proportions and everything stay pretty solidly proportioned, I guess, with 3D objects because they're 3D objects. You know, you can that's what they do. They maintain their proportion in like kind of a 2D environment. So I was trying to make it like, you know, I was trying not to have any sort of jarring thing where it was like, you know, this is something that's clearly 2D and this is something that's clearly 3D. I didn't want to have that juxtaposition. Excuse me. So I was, you know, trying my best to be meticulous, and this like keeps happening to me. I'll do things the long way, specifically in like, you know, for animating and stuff. I'll do things the long way, and then when I'm like, all right, I have like balanced enough precarious layers together to make it seem like it's doing the thing that I want it to do. And then like the next day after I'm done, I'll have an epiphany and be like, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to go back to that shot. That one's just done. So yeah, trial and error, and I also learned best by just doing things the wrong way first.
I mean, making mistakes is a big part of learning anything.
Yeah.
Remember that, people.
Yes, you want to make mistakes, because if you're never making mistakes, you're never learning.
Yep. Okay. Oh, we're already more than halfway through it.
Oh my goodness, really?
So fast. I know, right?
Oh my gosh.
So fast. Checking the cheat sheet. Oh, I thought someone had a question, but that was somebody else posting in the chat. Okay. Okay, so next point, because we talked about 3D. We talked about like how to get it into harmony. But okay, did you see lately some cool example of where like 3D was used with 2D? Because earlier we were talking about like how something that looks good often will be like if a 2D animation looks like 3D, and then if a 3D kind of looks like 2D. So a lot of the time we're trying to mix both of them together. And I know a lot of the time people criticize this and say no, it doesn't look great, which arguably sometimes it is right, like it doesn't look that great, but a lot of time it actually looks pretty nice. So do you have some like ideas right off the mind that you saw
Oh yeah,
that look pretty cool?
tons and tons and tons. Specifically anime, because I've heard this argument come around mostly when it has to do with anime.
Mm-hmm.
To just kind of preface real quick, anything that you say to an artist, like that's negative about their work, they probably already know. Like it's probably not something. It's probably something that they were thinking about the entire time they were making it. It's probably something.
Yeah, usually they know.
Contending with and being like, oh man, I wish I could do this, but time or whatever. And so the argument gets made a lot that it's like quote unquote lazy to use 3D assets or not a true test of art skill.
Cheating.
Yeah, and it's like, no, because it does not take away the quality of the story whatsoever.
Yep.
If we are as artists able to get through the nitty gritty as quickly as possible and focus all of our energy and passion, or at least distribute it in a way that we would prefer, like for instance, you can see this kind of happen when animes will have talking shots that are not like anime or not sakuga because they're not like super highly dynamic.
The goal is just to do like exposition and talk about whatever. It's not about making crazy animation.
Yeah, and so it'll seem obvious that like they save their quote unquote more skilled animators or just for like the bigger shots, and they'll save the budget for that stuff. You can I've definitely been sitting there watching anime and been like, oh gee, what is this? I can see where the budget went. But like that's still, I think that's an indication that they properly divided their assets and their team, because you want the big stuff to be big. You want the big dramatic stuff at the end. You want the last 10 minutes of every My Hero Academia movie to be like the best animation you've ever seen because it's the finale, And so I recognize that people can recognize when 3D is being used alongside 2D, and it can not work sometimes, because it is at the end of the day a job and a product that needs to be pushed out. So sometimes things have to get rushed. But if we can learn to quote unquote rush things the right way, then we can save all of ourselves we can save our freaking artists from getting hospitalized like they have been lately. That's an entire other tangent, but and still make great anime. So like a lot of the things that I'm thinking about for like 3D use in anime is around the what's it called? Well, I mean, just all of Attack on Titan, really, because in the first season they had the town, like 3D assets for the town when they're whipping around it and stuff like that. And then now they're using 3D Titans, because only one of the Titans I think had been 3D before.
Yeah.
That wasn't until season 2. Which, like, granted, I love the look of the Colossal Titan season 1 when he's hand drawn and everything. That's amazing. But there's a reason season 1 and season 2 were like 4 years apart.
Yep.
And it's just not a viable way to do it. Like, I think that if every artist and every animator had their their druthers, they would never release anything because they would never finish it. Because
one of my friend in Japan, worked a lot on Attack on Titans, and she did so many of the crazy angled horse scene, like with horses.
Oh my god,
And she had
horses
no
too?
3D assets whatsoever to help.
Oh my god.
So, but it would have probably been helpful. So
There was and like I don't know how many like quote unquote non-animators we have watching, or at least people who aren't mired in it, but there was like a classic the classic test of an animator used to be how well they could animate horses, because horses are like notoriously hard to animate. Which is one of the reasons why, like, you know, all James Baxter has to do for his reel is just show any of his shots from Spirit, and that like kind of proves his mettle as an animator, because it's just amazing horse stuff. There was a I feel so bad because I don't remember his name, but I think I learned about this artist through Mother's Basement, that YouTube channel. But he's a manga artist who just does it digitally and uses absolutely all of the 3D assets in like Clip Studio and stuff. And, you know, people were, of course, saying like, lazy, blah, 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 blah. And he was just like, I would like to live. I'd like to not constantly just be working and making art forever. I love making art, but I don't want to die doing it. You know, he really valued his health and other artists' health, and he really pushed for like, if you have the tools to make things easier, why not use them?
Make them, right?
Yeah. And in my mind, one of the ways I kind of compensate for stuff like that, I'm learning to let it go more. But I used to be that type of animator where I would just do line after line after line after line until I got the exact perfect one. But check this out. I don't even need to do that anymore. Look at this. Look at this. I can just click on this and be like, oh man, that looks so much better. Or look at that. Oh, crazy. And so it's just better. It's better to go to bed on time than to stay up all night getting something wrong.
Yep.
So yes, value your health, please, young artists. You need it. It's art is amazing. Your passion is amazing, but you don't want to lose it because you hospitalized yourself.
That is so important, because even like in my tutorials or in my work, like oftentimes I teach to studios, I teach to people who've been animating in the industry for forever, and they're like sometimes I hear it, and I think if I hear it, a lot of artists, even like younger or older, like age doesn't matter, but like we hear it all the time where like these pillars of animation will go like, oh, using 3D is cheating. Back in my days, we actually learned how to draw, and I was like, what? Like no, like
it's not what
first
this means.
No, because even older generation animators, if they animated Spirit or any of these amazing like old 2D features, they had models made out of like clay or like Sculpey or something. Like they had something to reference from. And what bothers me is that we are quick. I am very quick to tell all of my students, go get reference. You want to draw a microphone? Find a picture, find many pictures of microphone to get the different angles, or buy yourself a microphone. Like, you know, if I'm going to, the first thing I animated out of animation school was a little shorts on horses.
Aww.
I love horses. Good thing I know how to animate them, because I would have had a bad time.
Yeah.
But, you know, when we went to an actual horse place, we saw horses, we rode horses, we became horses. But like, what is the difference between this and using a 3D ref? Like, bro, it's the same, right?
Yeah, absolutely nothing. That was another thing that, like, you know, made me want to be an animator, was watching like the behind the scenes for Up or Lion King, and, you know, seeing them play with lion cubs, or seeing them go to South America, I think, is where he aims his house in Up. But like, they got to go there. They went there and they took pictures, and I was just like, this is amazing. Like, this, it's all a part of the experience. They were just essentially, it's like a very well funded Google search.
Yeah.
In essence.
And another thing
Um,
that can be very, very helpful with 3D. Oh wait, you were not done. Go for it. Go for it.
I was going to tangent to something else, so go ahead.
Oh, me too. So I'd rather have your tangent. Let's
Okay.
go.
All right. It does kind of have to do with what we were talking about. It's just a quick thing. But artists, if you are sad and anxious and depressed, it doesn't make your art better. It makes you hate your art more. Therapy will not kill who you are as a creative.
Therapy
That's
is
just your
great.
anxiety talking. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like I think Van Gogh saw the world kind of similar to how his paintings were, and that was like an indication of a specific type of psychosis. But just because he was getting treated, or just hang on, let me rephrase that. If he had been treated, and if he had learned to manage it, then we would have seen more Starry Nights, and
I
less.
agree.
I guess stories about how maybe Van Gogh didn't kill himself and somebody shot him, and he was just being really, really nice because he knew the person would just get in trouble and he didn't want to bother anybody. It's like
And
a real theory.
yeah. um and I think that's also important. Like I know we're talking about 3D and stuff, but like these streams are also just to talk about like artists and art in general. Just you guys should feel good in general. It's great to feel good, and that just comes to a discussion I had in the art community, like in the past week or so, where an artist and I think it's a bit related to like using reference in 3D and whatnot. A lot of people tend to go about the way that like overworking yourself is trendy.
Yeah.
um I'm glad that it's becoming less and less so, but especially when I was a student and stuff, like it was so like there's a trend around overworking yourself and not using 3D as reference, for example, where like there's
Yeah.
there, there's a prestige that I don't understand why it's going to be like, I did not use 3D for that car. I traced the whole thing. No, I mean, I animated the whole thing by myself. And I'm like, yeah, but the end result is not better. Like
No.
what? And and this leads so often to burnout in the
Yeah.
art. Like, so I think if everybody can be like wary and like careful about that, because it's sad, but it could be your teachers, which are people that you're supposed to look up and believe in. A lot of the in a lot of school, I did hear teachers going about like using 3D as a cheat, and I'm like, stop putting this into your students' idea. Like, it's not true that if you work longer hours, therefore harder, your results are going to be better. And like, this is just not true, especially not when you get out of school. Like, it might be a luxury you have in school, but in a studio, if you can use a card that is 3D and trace it and finish your scene 3 weeks before someone else who did not, no one in a studio is gonna go like, you're cheating. So this is really just a trend outside of studios and like in school. But like I don't know, I've never seen anyone in a studio like go like using 3D as bad, like ever. Like, I don't know where that comes from. That's the thing that
You can't really sit there and talk artistic morals when you got deadlines.
right. But like like deadlines are another discussion we can have. But like having deadlines is actually like there's some healthiness in
Yes, it's
deadlines
really
because
good for
you
you.
need to finish something.
Yes.
And
Yeah, and I feel like the whole 3D is cheating type of argument only works if you're some artist who is sponsored by like a really rich person, and they're like, I would like you to draw a duck for me, and you can spend the entire next year doing it, but don't
why?
trace it, and
Because
I'll pay you, and you'll make better money than anybody else, but don't trace it. And then, so if you're in that situation, then yeah, by all means, take your time. But if you're animating something, or especially since a lot of artists, especially now, are trying to get as much content out as quick as possible because they're fighting algorithms and stuff like that. and they have to stay relevant. So I see artists and animators who use who they're fortunate enough to have a style, or perhaps they developed it. I do not know. I do not speak for them. But they have a very quick and easy style that they can utilize to make some great 10-minute stuff with minimal, not minimal effort, minimal exhaustion. That's what I'll say.
Oh, that's good. I love that wording.
And yeah, like,
it's not minimum effort, it's maximum efficiency.
Yeah,
let's go.
Yeah, Ice Cream Sandwich, Doobus Goobus, they've got very simple styles, and they come out with animations, not even like weekly, just frequently enough that they've managed to amass a following. And that's something that I'm honestly trying to work on for myself, because I got this anatomy book a year or two ago, and I'm obsessed with it.
Is it the one that's called like Anatomy for Sculptor, or like Anatomy for...
It's actually called Morpho by Michel Lauricelli, I think. Ooh. Is his name. But cool. he practices a style called écorché, or écorche. I don't know if that's the proper way to pronounce it.
Yeah, it's écorché. It's actually a French word. It means tear your skin off.
Yeah. So he basically draws titans.
Yeah, okay. That's really cool.
And so like it's which, by the way, any artists listening, please write that book down. Morpho, Michel Lauricelli. It's great. It's the best anatomy book I've ever read. He breaks down everything and how things work really well. And like the entire book is mostly just drawings, like his drawings. And they're really, really good drawings that you can use to reference when you're like trying to figure out how a collarbone or something works. But you also have to recognize that this is not something that you can paint into every frame. Like you can't sit there and draw a hip bone for every single frame unless you're animating a skeleton. But even then, you gotta compromise accuracy, and that's where style will come in. Like the creativity and how quickly you choose to draw a skeleton, and what you choose to omit, and what you choose to include or emphasize, and why. That'll all come out naturally the faster you try to draw something. And that can really help you save time, develop a style, gain a clearer understanding of your identity as an artist. And that's like one of his first pieces of advice in the book. Real good book.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, and earlier we were also talking about like not burning out, and using 3D is one of the ways to not burn out. Yeah. For two things, I think. One thing is one thing that we sometimes overlook is that like not every artist is able to make their own 3D models. And I've seen so many artists just become friends with others because like some maybe 3D artists just love to help give away like little 3D models. So just if you're a 2D artist and you want to learn 3D, like if you know someone who does 3D, like you can ask them. Sometimes they're gonna be happy to help you out. So like you make connections with people, and when you make connections, you're usually happier. So, just saying.
I'm certain they'll be like absolutely thrilled if you're like, hey, do you have like a favorite puppet or model that I can just like animate for practice? Right? They'd love that.
And even if you're in an animation school, like something that I think is kind of sad, like I went back to my animation school some weeks ago to teach to the teacher. That is interesting.
Interesting.
And I saw the students that are there now. And back in my days, since there's a 2D program and a 3D program, we were very close to the 3D people. And if I needed like a model, I could be like, hey, in my short film, there's a skateboard. Like, does anyone in the class want to take can someone help me, give me a skateboard? Like people will be like, oh yeah, I'll model you a skateboard. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Or if 3D students were struggling with a design, they could go into the 2D animation class, be like, can someone help me with my character design? Because I know how to model it, but I don't know how to draw that well. So like, it's connection. I think we should stop having 3D and 2D be two separate complete world, because, everybody has so much to learn from one another. So go make connections. Go make friends.
And that's not a that's not an excuse to go be like, hey, give me free art. You have to recognize the collaborative effort behind it.
Yeah.
So give and take. Maybe have something that you can offer them if I don't know. The thought's lost on me, but
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like it's give and take. You give and you take, but you also give and stuff. So
Full Metal Alchemist, equivalent exchange.
Exactly, equivalent exchange. And the other thing about the burnout is also something I was talking about some weeks ago, where an artist in our community was like, "Hey, I'm very stressed out all the time. I'm very anxious. I'm pretty sure I'm having a big burnout. Like I don't want to do art and whatever." And like two things that are very important, like unrelated to 3D this time, but like I think we should normalize way more like getting mental professional help.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the reasoning that we had were like, well, maybe you just need someone like qualified to talk to, like not me. I'm just a YouTuber. I'm not qualified for that. And like
I'm a YouTuber, but not that kind of YouTuber.
Right? But they're like, oh yeah, but I don't want to like I don't want to like spend money on that. I'm like, well, I mean, I wish we didn't have to, but like if you run in the street and you walk and you break your leg and your bone's poking out of it, I mean, like you're not gonna ask if you should spend $20 to get it fixed or not, or more. But somehow for mental issues, we do have the question, and I'm like, if we like, the talk should be that like like it's like your mental well-being is as important as your bones well-being. So like
yes, it's all physical and important,
right? Yeah.
And also studies have shown that emotional pain can be as intense or more so than physical pain.
Definitely. So
do be wary of that.
So yeah, but burnout is serious, and don't overwork yourself, people. And using 3D assets and animation can be a very big help.
Yes.
And don't listen to the haters who say that it's cheating, because it's not true.
And also, they're usually not artists, the people who say that.
That is true. Now that you mention it, that is completely correct. Huh? Never realized.
Yeah, it's the exact same people being like, it's just one line of code. Why can't you add this into the game? And it's like, you don't understand. if I pull one thread, it all falls apart.
Yep. Oh man, that's a very interesting talk, by the way. Thank you for being there. We have like 5 minutes left, so
I'm gonna
go see if we have any questions. If there's anything you want to say that we didn't talk about or forgot, like let me know. Just checking at the chats here.
I feel like I'm pretty satisfied with everything that I've said, unless I've somehow managed to upset everybody.
No, I don't think so. I think people are very happy. I love the colors in your character, by the way. That's really cool.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of the whole Ozymandias purple and gold type color scheme.
Yeah. Oh, another thing that is important when you work in any software and you want to use 3D as reference, don't forget that in Harmony there's many ways that you can import it. You can import it as a 3D object, but you can also import it as a 2D reference, which is very useful. You can find these options in like the import button. And one thing that is also important is that when we do 3D, a lot of the time we don't do 3D ourselves, so we're going to find the models online. Oh yeah, thanks for showing it. Can you click on it?
Yeah, you're welcome.
Click on it.
Oh, sorry. Ta-da. Convert to 2D, convert to FBX.
Yeah, just to show that. Yeah, there's like a convert to 2D that can be very useful if you guys want to try it. It just makes like a little screen cap of your object that you can still move around. So that's pretty cool. Thank you.
Oh, that's helpful. Creating layers based on file names. That way you don't have to.
Right, that is also useful.
Especially if you're someone like me whose like keyboard is like kind of to the left of them, and I have to like turn and type if I want to type. So.
Yep. So that's pretty useful. And And if you find models for free on the internet, sometimes they come out really huge. So in the preferences of Harmony, like somewhere into the menu, there is a thing that says scale factor that you can change. It's pretty easy to find. So
You're
that's
talking advanced settings or?
yeah, just into the preferences. It's somewhere. I don't remember. Oh yeah, it's just there. I think.
Oh.
Yeah, at the bottom left. 3D models, bottom left.
Ah, I see.
Right? You can always change the factor to make them look smaller, so that's pretty useful.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
I think my last word for today would be to, like, not last word, but like last little subject is you know how we said that 3D can help you have an easier time like drawing and animating. I think one thing I would, and we talked about it, I think pre-stream when we were having the technical difficulties.
Yeah.
But one very important thing is that to you guys to know is that making art doesn't have to be like necessarily your job. Like there's nothing wrong with just enjoying making art after work hours, because yeah, it doesn't have to be your full-time job either. Like there's a lot of fulfillment and happiness that comes from just from like having Harmony at home and using it to create your own stuff. Like I used to work in studios, but nowadays I mostly teach on a daily basis, and that's what I love. I love people. I love to talk with people. I love to talk with you. It's very fun.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah, and there's many ways. Like being an artist, there's many ways to be an artist, and it like being in a studio is not the only way to be an artist. That's what we mean.
Yeah, and you definitely don't have to aim. So like. It was weird growing up because I felt like I needed to be like inundated with like some glorious purpose, you know, like a Loki type situation. So I was like, oh man, if I make art, I get my name out there, and I touch people beyond my reach, then I'll become immortal.
You're a high
and
school
blah,
teacher,
blah, blah,
I think. So that's very, very glorious. If anything, I do think.
I mean, it is a battle. But like I also just like kind of lost the need for that. I recognize that recognition can be very important as an artist. I think it should be appreciated. Say again.
That's called being mature.
Yeah.
And growing up.
Yeah. But I think it's important to appreciate, but not something that you should define your art by.
Agreed.
Also, very, very quick tangent. Anybody in Toon Boom? In your preferences, click that button. Save automatically.
Oh yeah, autosave is amazing.
So much work before. And you can set it to like how often. I'm apparently moving faster because I initially had it set for 10 minutes, and then I had a crash at one point, and I was like, wow, I did all that in less than 10 minutes. I mean, it sucks that it's gone, but it's cool to know that I was that fast. But yeah, that was that quick tangent.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. It was a real pleasure. Yeah.
I had so much fun. I want to come back. What do I have to do?
Well, maybe we can do another subject, another stream, and we can call you back. Who knows?
Who knows?
There's so many things to talk about in this industry. Oh my god.
So many. There's so much.
You don't need to do anything special. Just keep being awesome. Yay!
Yeah. That's the other thing. That's a huge thing as an artist. Just keep doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
Find the things you're obsessed with and pursue them. And your passions will drive your skill.
Agreed. And with that, I think I will say farewell, everyone. Thank you for coming, and have a nice day. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.